Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, January 21st, 2021. I guess it's, for many people, the first day of 2021. It's the first day of, as we designated it earlier, Biden 2021 anyway. So, I was sworn into office yesterday, but this is the day we wake up with him in office. We'll see if it makes a difference. It's made a difference, it appears, from my morning Twitter feed over at Fox and Friends, where it is noted that Fox and Friends has finally caught on to the biggest story of the year. The folks at Media Matters, in particular Bobby Lewis here, lets us know that, can you believe this? Fox and Friends is table slamming outraged that 4,000 Americans are dying of COVID-19 every day. But what's got them mad today is that Amazon didn't, quote, step up earlier to help distribute vaccines. Quite the complaint coming from former de facto presidential advisors who cheered Trump through pandemic mismanagement. That could easily be the story of the day today, despite the fact that there's been a new president inaugurated. Or maybe it's the story of the day over at Fox and Friends because a new president has been inaugurated. I think that's probably what's happening here. Quite interesting. The Amazon angle, in case you didn't know, and it would be easy for you to miss, is that I guess they have now offered, I guess they, for some reason, didn't want to work with Donald Trump. Not really sure why. But now they're very interested in offering their help with the logistics of vaccine distribution. I don't know if that's an offer to take them up on or not. We may have to, because as it turns out, the big story on COVID is, projection again. Ladies and gentlemen, can you believe it? It turns out to all have been projection. Those stories about, I got here, the cupboards were bare, we had broken tests, the army was out of bullets. It turns out that the COVID vaccine cupboards are what's bare now. There's nothing left. They just didn't make any damn vaccine like they said they did. And apparently they manipulated the definition of their terms enough that the numbers that the Trump administration was giving out in terms of vaccine production, distribution, etc., were just, it was complete nonsense. Basically, the warehouses are empty of millions of doses of vaccine that we were told had already been manufactured and in some cases already been distributed. It also turns out that, well, you see, our definition of distributed is different. Apparently, the Trump administration thought a good idea for the definition of how many doses have you distributed is, well, how many have we been asked for, and how many have we told them we would give them if we had them? And that's the number distributed. Whereas everybody else in the States was like, well, to me, distributed means at least can you give me a FedEx tracking number so I can tell when something's been sent. If there's a tracking number for these doses, we'll give you a break and call that distributed, even though really it should be, is it in somebody's arm at this point? Or at a minimum, is it in the hands of a clinic that can put it in somebody's arm? So that's where we are with that at the moment. And I guess, I don't know. So they're angry that Amazon didn't offer to do this earlier, which, they didn't really want to work with the Trump administration. Who knows whether they would have been allowed to do what they do or been paid for what they do. And I guess they're still, I guess Jeff Bezos still wants to be paid for things. I'm not really sure why that is exactly. And also, I don't know, can Amazon deliver things at negative 94 degrees Fahrenheit? I don't know. Who knows? They might have the ability to do that. They got robots that can walk like people. I got no idea what they can and can't do. But I guess you could look into it. But I don't know why that would make Fox and Friends that mad, except that, of course, they are anxious to lay the blame for COVID at Joe Biden's feet, because he's president now. And, there's some extent to which you got to take responsibility for all of this. But you will remember from our learning about COVID-19 and what it is and how it works all the help we've gotten in understanding that from Greg Dworkin and others in the health fields. The responsibility for the people who are catching COVID and or turning up as new cases or dying now, and really for the next couple of weeks. All those people got that under the Trump watch, if that's something you care to track. I mean, it really isn't something a normal person should spend a great deal of time tracking. If you're sick, we should cure you. If you're dying, we should do the best we can to help and make you comfortable and take care of your family afterwards. It shouldn't matter who was president when you caught it, except for the fact that, a couple 100,000 of the people who are dying probably wouldn't have faced that possibility, and a few million of the people who have contracted it and thankfully will get over it and not die, although who knows what the long-term health consequences would be, would also have been free and clear of this if we had handled it like a first world nation, but we didn't. Okay, well, there's lots more to discuss, of course, and if we're going to be talking about COVID, we might as well have a doctor around. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Hey, good morning.
Not limited to COVID by any means, of course.
I'm watching all the pictures of rainbows over the Capitol. They weren't all from yesterday, but they might as well have been. It's weird hearing about Amazon volunteering to do distribution because in my neck of the woods, most of the time when Amazon sends something out, you get it by UPS, FedEx, and the U.S. Post Office.
Oh, yeah, that too. That's funny. That is right.
So, hey, I volunteer. All you have to do is, FedEx will do it. Don't blame me. It's UPS's problem.
Yeah, that'll create quite a mess.
Post Office. Don't blame me. So I'm not sure exactly what they're talking about.
Maybe this is where they want to use those drones.
Yeah, maybe.
I saw something in Star Wars
in terms of logistics, one of the stories today, a whole bunch of stories to talk about from yesterday, but one of the stories today is the Biden administration wakes up and finds there's no distribution plan whatsoever. There's not only no vaccine, but there was never a plan.
And
they were lying about everything. There's disputes, for example, between how much they said they sent out and how much the states said they received. There's for example, a 700,000 dose differential between what the feds say they did and what New York State said they received. And New York State is canceling their appointments. If you had an appointment to get a vaccine, forget it. It's on hold for 2 weeks because they don't have any. So, there's a whole bunch of weird stuff going on. And, I don't know this, but I certainly suspect that what's going to turn out to happen is that Jared was in charge and they were lying about everything.
I think so. Even if this is the worst of it, it's horrific that they were just lying about how much vaccine they had. But there's this problem of the manufacturers are at some point going to say, we made that stuff. I don't know what you did with it. And then we're going to have a problem.
Well, some of it wasn't made. Some of it needs to, the Defense Production Act needs to be invoked. We need to have the kind of vials that have one extra dose in it.
Yes.
A whole bunch of stuff.
You need to buy it when it's offered.
Yeah,
that was a problem.
You need to give it to people when you get it. There's a whole bunch of stuff that has to happen. You have to pay the states instead of just saying, well, it's a state problem. No, it's a county problem. No, it's a town problem. No, it's your household problem. No, it's your block captain's problem.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody pay for the neighbor to your left.
Hey, put the money up like the Democrats claimed, all those months ago to get the states up and running. And you need a plan, and it's got to be federally driven. So all of that is true. We saw the beginnings of that happening with the rainbow over the Capitol yesterday with all the good stuff. And as we go through, there's so much that happened. I'm going to do this in sort of tweet by tweet form just to give you a sense of what was going on here. But you'll see, if you want to use the military metaphor, that, Trump is gone. Yes, you pointed out, you woke up, everybody slept a little better last night, except for Brit Hume. And, you woke up and you found that they weren't training the howitzers on you, but there's still a bunch of landmines and IEDs that you have to step around gingerly in order to get stuff done. And this COVID vaccine distribution, or lack thereof, and vaccine, or lack thereof, is all part and parcel of the problem. The solution is going to be multifactorial. I mean, for example, Johnson & Johnson's vaccine may come on board soon. There'll just be more of it. It's going to take a little bit more time. You can't vaccinate people with stuff you don't have. So unfortunately, we're still going to have to be a little bit more patient. But, as I've been saying, I was never expecting everything to all of a sudden get solved by February. I think we're talking about early spring, and I think we're still on track for that. So let's look at some of the good stuff. This is Mark Schmidt tweeting, I'm in awe of how good Biden's political instincts have seemed at each turn, winning the nomination, beating Trump decisively, chaotic transition, initial appointments, first-day priorities. But maybe it's not his instincts. Maybe it's like he's taken in the whole arc of political lessons since the 1970s. There's this whole thing about, hey, maybe, experience matters. It's not necessarily
right?
competence. You can't say Joe Biden is super hyper competent. He's an above average politician, but he's been around the block and he's seen a lot of this stuff. And, part of the deal of being a really good executive is appointing people like Ron Klain to be your chief of staff and hiring the people that can do stuff, and putting together the inaugural and last night's concert, is part of that.
I mean, that's not like the same sort of level of importance, but, look, the people.
Well, when you
need
can't
to do
even
the jobs
do an inaugural, and then your first job on the scene is to lie about the crowd.
Yes.
Let's contrast that. We're only talking about
absolutely right. Everything that look, it's a short tenure so far, but certainly everybody gets the point. If you know what you're doing, you will likely do a better job at it when it's your turn. You're right.
Well, the other side of the coin, though, and I think the more important point here is I recognize that it's important to know what you're doing.
Yes, good.
I don't celebrate the fact that we don't.
Right. And we got to run. I tell you, we got to run business. We got to run the government like somebody who doesn't know what they're doing is running it. Wait a minute. I mean, like a business, but not my business because all my businesses fail or something like that. There's certainly a bumper sticker in here somewhere. I know I can find it again.
Yeah, well, their approach was to run the government like it's none of your business. I don't think that particularly worked out the way it was supposed to.
Not so far, it didn't. And by the way, I don't mean to sell the fantastic effort at the inaugural celebrations short either. Not only doing it with a foreshortened transition, like I assume at some point they said, well, first things first, we got to take care of business, and then we'll arrange for the inaugural celebrations. But on top of that, a pandemic. And I think everybody had a good time with that last night. And they were able to do it from home. Didn't even have to worry about parking.
Fireworks. But, there's a whole list of things they did do. They didn't just do the concert. So, again, that's part of the point. Yeah, it was the thing in the evening. But during the day, they got a whole lot of stuff done.
They did.
Here's
even the ceremonial stuff.
Pointing out a lot of chatter on Fox yesterday about Biden being partisan for signing a bunch of executive orders, for example. And anchor Sandra said, well, what message does that send? And Chris Wallace says, well, it sends the message that we won.
Among other things, but also, I mean, it's a dumb question, obviously. Like, what message does it send for the chief executive to send an executive order?
How dare they claim unity and then they go ahead and do all the things they want to do?
Yeah. Well, that underlies it, and it's a point that needs to be made. I thought it's interesting that he even decided to level that line of attack. Wait a minute, the chief executive is doing something executive, and we love law and order, and he's signing orders? Horrible.
Well, again, I think it's more than that. I think it's the whole thing about they say they want unity, but how can you do that when you denounce white supremacism?
Right. But it's so easy.
They say they want unity, but how can you do that when you're pointing fingers at people who were rioting and trying to kill policemen, and now you're actually trying to prosecute them? What kind of unity is that?
That's the law and order kind, man.
Well, you scratch your head and say, what are you talking about? What you're talking about is that we don't want to take any accountability.
Yes.
We knew we didn't want responsibility. We did that for 4 years. But now that the grown-ups are back, you're also suggesting that there's accountability. People like Rand Paul, people like Ted Cruz, have to be responsible for what they did. Lauren Boebert, Mo Brooks. Yep. We don't want that. We can't have that, because if you start talking about accountability, the next thing you know, you'll be talking about what we did, and we don't want you to do that.
Right. Well, it's been quite annoying.
That's the underlying all of this.
Yeah, they won't stop calling you either. True, and John Cornyn at it again this morning. They're back to the, spending their mornings arguing about jurisdiction of the impeachment trial for now ex-President Trump, which is really it's not ground they should be fighting on. The sole court of impeachment is the Senate. Nobody has jurisdiction if they don't. And anyway, I think they would rather just have it that nobody have jurisdiction. But it's a dumb argument, and it's been dumb for a long time. And it reminds me of nothing so much as, oddly enough, the courtroom scene from Good Will Hunting, where the real answer to all the gibberish is, we have to paraphrase it a little bit here. You killed the cop. You're going in. That's it. Don't tell me about jurisdiction and what the founders want. The founders didn't want you sending murder squads into the Capitol. I am positive of that.
Right. So let's follow up on that a little bit. This one is from Eric Toller. Eric is somebody who's a researcher at Bellingcat and sort of has an interest in this. And he's got a thread about how the QAnon people reacted to yesterday. And says, as Biden is an hour away from inauguration, that's the time he wrote it, yesterday at 11 o'clock, Trump is about to land in Florida.
It's false now.
And there are roughly 4 types of QAnon believers right now: the hopeful, the angry, the confused, and the resigned.
It was
and he gives
weird
examples. And a new one he just found. It's our fault for not being pure enough. We deserve every bit of this because we didn't fight. We're an embarrassment, and us combat veterans should be ashamed.
Well, that's
let
true.
This happen because we didn't fight besides on a keyboard. We are an embarrassment. All of us should be ashamed.
Yes.
So,
good.
Toller says, I thought there'd be a lot more denial recalculating than there is. If I did a word cloud with all the QAnon thread comments, sick stomach, vomit, and cry would be the biggest words. Most Q people seem to be genuinely shocked and confused about what's happening. I saw a video of a woman just crying her eyes out that Trump didn't come and save them. And he adds parenthetically, don't feel bad for them. The thing they were expecting is mass arrests and public executions.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But absolutely nobody's buying into this rebranding and shifting of the goalposts. Today was supposed to be the Great Awakening, not the Great Re-election campaign. We've paused chat for now to have everybody take a breather, it said on Telegram on one of the Q anon accounts.
Right.
And did a general survey of how they were thinking. And delusions that everything's going to work out anyway. And in fact, other people were reporting that the Q folks split into 2 groups. That Biden is really Q folks, the few of them who tried to push that, because basically it's a grift and they want people to keep following them.
Yeah, sure.
And the vast majority of them who said, what are you talking about? That's nuts.
No, that's crazy. What are you talking about?
Crazy. That's crazy talk.
You people lost your minds.
We're Q. Come on. We don't do crazy talk.
That's
here.
amazing. I figured there would be a couple of people, but I figured in the main they would all just come up with something, outlandish to keep following. It's a good try,
though.
That's
pretty outlandish.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
Right? Ellie Mistel has a nice little tweet thread here of some of the protests. Don't forget, it wasn't just the Capitol. The storm was going to happen at all the different state capitals.
Yes, and every Dairy Queen in America. I don't know.
Yeah, Mark Legerio is the one lone Trump supporter out in front here in the New York State Capitol. He says he expected a few thousand people, and he's disappointed.
Yeah, great pictures. A roundup. There are a couple of threads compiling them of pictures outside the state capitals where they set out fencing and cops and everything, and 2 people, 3 people would show up and. Yeah.
Yep. Happened here in Connecticut. There was a small handful. San Francisco, state capital in Sacramento, a lone Trump supporter wearing a red MAGA hat protested as President Biden took the oath of office. There's a 3rd person who was supposed to show up, but he left to go skiing.
All right.
Right? Tallahassee couldn't even get a critical mass of Florida men together. And then here's Maine. There's a person.
Yeah.
Here's one person is using a trash can to prop up the flag. So I guess that's kind of a metaphor here. That's Arizona, single protester. And then,
you could all
we got
Bernie
3 in Madison.
Oh, well, that's a crowd.
Wisconsin's like a hotbed.
Yes.
Right?
It's the only hot thing they have right now.
Then Brandon and Matt here in Nevada. Brandon and Matt assure us that the machine they've been feeding money into for 2 months is about to pay. We got 3 in Georgia. I mean, it just gives you an idea what's going on here. 1 in Michigan, and the slumped against the fire hydrant in defeat photo.
Oh.
right?
Don't
In Kansas,
slump
2
on 'em.
protesters on the southeast corner. One
Okay.
told me he's disappointed so few people showed up. It's over.
Yeah, I guess.
And, it's kind of sinking in, and it's just really interesting to see how that reacts. So, you have all of that going on.
Public health advice.
And
Don't touch
the
the fire
reactions that we
hydrants.
see today from the Brit Humes of the world,
Yes.
are just not how it's going to wind up. It's simply, I need 24, 48 hours to recalibrate my grift, and I'm not totally sure how I'm going to approach this. But obviously and clearly, it's in my best interest to push the line that nobody should be held accountable, because otherwise you'll hold me accountable, and we simply can't have that.
No, well, that
Meanwhile, the
can't be
public
allowed.
is looking at it differently. This is G. Elliott Morris. Initial approval ratings, according to Pew, of Biden's job, quote, explaining his policies and plans for the future is 58%. This isn't Biden's job approval. He's only been on the job a day. It's basically
So far, so
his
good.
transition approval.
Okay.
Now, Trump was a 39 when he was inaugurated. Biden's 58. Obama was a 70, and Bush was a 50. Clinton was a 64. So Biden's right there in the middle of where you expect normal presidents to be.
All right.
And
normal about
G.
that.
Elliott Morris says, if I'm the president, I'm interpreting this as a pretty strong evidence that it's a mandate.
Yeah. Why not?
Why not? He's just right up there with Obama and Bush,
Also
higher than
unified
Bush,
control of
close to Clinton. Call it a mandate, because, if you have the majority, you write the rules. And, if you win by 3 votes, you're landslide Joe. And we know that because we've seen that in Connecticut and many other places. You win by 3 votes, and it's a landslide.
Nope.
And your colleagues call you landslide, whatever your first name is. And you declare it's a mandate.
Okay.
Because you can.
Sure. I mean,
Because you have the
you might as
gavel,
well.
and they're asking you the questions with
true.
the microphones and the TV cameras.
Certainly would have been fair to put that question out ahead of Georgia, but I mean, winning 2 Senate seats in Georgia should probably seal your
mandate.
claim on it.
Obvious
Yeah.
mandate for change. Because,
Majority in the Senate.
You've
So-
cleaned up.
Yeah, right. And there's no way I lost Georgia. Well, let me prove it to you twice more. Pow, pow. There you go. Mandate.
You lost Georgia 3 times. In fact, you kept losing.
Yeah,
It was
right.
great
You
watching you
alone
lose all
lost
that,
it
all
3
that time.
times. Then you lost 2
So
Senate races.
Mark Sumner, was it Mark? Yeah, Mark Sumner over at Daily Kos
was he protesting outside of
has a
state
nice,
capitol?
lovely running list of President Biden hitting the ground running with a list of rapid-fire executive orders, some of which were done already, some of which were to come. For
Yes.
example, no more wall, 100-day mask challenge, wearing masks to be mandated at all federal facilities on federal land and by
Except
federal
one.
employees. Rejoin the World Health Organization. That's already started. Tony Fauci was the lead
That's
person
good.
already on today's call. Restructure COVID response. We talked about that. That certainly needs to be done because
Any
there wasn't any
structure.
response to
Right.
restructure. They didn't have a
That
response.
should be easy.
Continue the pause on student loan payments, extend the moratorium on foreclosure, rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement, cancel Keystone XL pipeline,
Hey.
end oil and gas development and national monuments.
Hey, that's nice.
Also, strengthen
Good.
anti-discrimination laws in the workplace, include non-citizens in the census figures, review and advance racial equity in the federal government and the Muslim travel ban, maintain protections for Liberians in the U.S.,
Liberians.
defend Dreamers program,
Good.
and limit ICE's ability to detain immigrants, freeze last-minute regulatory changes, create executive branch ethics doctrine,
Sure, why not have one of those?
right? Or as Conan O'Brien puts it, 6.8 miles below the sea is the Marianas Trench, and 6.8 miles below that is the bar Trump set for Biden. so I think it's pretty easy to do that. But, that's a lot of planning and work to be doing in the first day or so. And it's even more than that. It turns out that Biden is identifying some of the landmines and IEDs that were left behind. There's a story here, for example, by Mark Joseph Stern that's in Slate. Biden's already fired 3 of Trump's worst appointees and isolated a 4th, by the way. Michael Ellis, who is the lawyer that just got installed at the national security apparatus, was already put on administrative leave.
Yeah.
That was one of the first things they
Gotta
did.
get some
There's
background
just
on
so much going on that they're doing. It's hard to keep up, but I just want to give you a flavor of all of this.
Yeah.
Many of Donald Trump's most notorious appointees, including his cabinet secretaries, resigned shortly before Biden took office, but myriad officials who Trump installed remained in spite of their antagonism. So hours into his presidency, Biden's already ousted 3 of his predecessors' most unqualified and corrupt appointees. He terminated Michael Pack, who was confirmed to head the U.S. Agency for Global Media. They're the ones that purged the staff of Voice of America of actual reporters and put in the propaganda people, so he's gone. Then he sacked Kathleen Kraninger, who was confirmed as director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Kraninger, who had no previous experience in consumer protection, immediately tried to undermine the agency's role as a watchdog for the financial sector. She scrapped a landmark rule that restricted predatory payday lending, pressuring staff to downplay the resulting harm to consumers, and refused to enforce a federal law that protected military personnel against a broad range of predatory lending. She's gone. And then he demanded the resignation of Peter Robb, who was confirmed at the National Labor Relations Board General Counsel in 2017. Robb is vehemently anti-union, and during his tenure, he tried to limit employees' free speech, gave managers more leeway to engage in wage theft, hobble unions' abilities to collect dues, and prevent employers from helping workers organize. He's out.
Yes, he refused to go, too.
Biden has authority to fire him before his term is over in November, and he announced he would not step down voluntarily, and stating that his resignation would be an unfortunate precedent, which, of course, had already been set by Harry Truman.
Yeah, okay.
So Biden fired him.
All right. Well, that sets a precedent nonetheless. And
tip of the iceberg, but, you got to start somewhere. So it was a good first day.
Yeah. And, a lot of the people that Biden has brought along with him are not far removed from similar jobs, if not the same jobs that they held in the Obama administration. They know who belongs there and who doesn't, and where there are weird offices hiding around corners. Milton can't hide forever. They'll find him eventually and root him out. It's a big project. Good start. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Greg Dworkin's still with us. It was a rapid-fire list of all the things that Joe Biden did before breakfast today, and now we find out what happens after. He gets a nutritious breakfast.
This is to make you all feel, like when you were 22 years old, were you a poet who would just wow the world? What have you done? I mean, Joe Biden has saved the world before breakfast 3 times over. What have you done today?
I felt bad. Yeah, right. Compared to all of that, this show
your
sucks.
Age, Mozart was dead how many years?
Right. Okay. So he got it all in an early morning. All right. Well, what else?
Yesterday, the Washington Post had all of their commentators, some of the good ones, some of the bad ones. The great ones like Gene Robinson and E.J. Dionne, and some of the awful ones were all commenting on the speech that Biden was giving for the inaugural yesterday. And for the most part, they were very impressed with it. I got included. My tweet pointing out that, Trump, not Trump, but, referencing the Carnage speech they all did, just how different this was. Yes. But that Biden has a stutter. He just gave an incredible speech. And it was just masterful, and you have to remember, it's just not easy for him. But, he did it. Yeah. And then, that young poet, who's incredibly talented, Lady Gaga, who has a nice set of pipes, I would say, also incredibly talented, just had a really, really short but poignant and cogent inaugural. It just moved everybody, and so it was a wonderful thing.
Amanda Gorman,
but the fact that Biden in fact has a stutter still isn't acknowledged by the same Fox News crowd that are all of a sudden outraged because people are dying from COVID.
Yes. Yeah, well, they'll get around to it eventually. We learned a lot yesterday. In fact, I learned we have youth poet laureates. I did not know that. Good poets, we got those.
She was just so good.
Just interesting title.
She herself
Sounds like she
also, has something of a stutter. So it's her presentation. She writes her poems in a way so that it's easier for her to articulate them.
Well, it's the right way. Seems
the right way.
Working.
So it was great. We have some teaching this morning from Professor Arnold Schwarzenegger for everybody. His class is back in session in Facebook. He says, I said this to somebody in the comments, but I think a lot of you need to hear this. Okay. I always say you should know your strengths and listen to the experts. If you want to learn about building biceps, listen to me. Because I've spent my life studying how to get the perfect peak, and I've been called the greatest bodybuilder of all time. We all have different specialties. Now, Tony Fauci and all of the virologists and epidemiologists and doctors have studied diseases and vaccines for their entire lives. So I listen to them, and I urge you to do the same, he says. None of us are going to learn more than them by watching a few hours of videos. Remember, we dissected what it means. I did the research.
Oh, yes.
Right? It meant I watched a video on YouTube, and now I'm an expert. And Schwarzenegger says, no. It's simple. If your house is on fire, you don't go on YouTube. You call the damn fire department. If you have a heart attack, you don't check in on your Facebook group. You call an ambulance. If 9 doctors tell you you have cancer and need to treat it or you'll die, and one doctor says it'll just go away, you should side with the 9. And in this case, virtually all of the real experts around the world are telling us the vaccine is safe, and some people on Facebook are saying it isn't. Yeah. So in general, I think if the circle of people you trust gets smaller and smaller and you find yourself more and more isolated, it should be a warning sign you're going down a rabbit hole of misinformation. Some people say it's weak to listen to experts. That's bogus. It takes strength to admit you don't know everything. Weakness is thinking you don't need expert advice and only listening to sources that confirm what you want to believe. It's a great message from Professor Schwarzenegger.
True.
And I think that's something that we all should take to heart here.
I agree. I will only register one note here on this, that YouTube and Facebook have an algorithm that turns the rabbit hole into the path of least resistance, and they really need to
they are
work
so
on that.
Guilty, Yeah. But again, we can't talk about accountability because then you'll actually find people responsible.
It takes effort to go down a rabbit hole, but if you're led
and we simply can't have that because they'll lose money.
Right. Okay. I think we all know that story. But Schwarzenegger, excellent statement. True. He's been doing very well lately. He's looking to get that constitutional amendment that'll allow him to be president someday.
Yeah. Here's a story you may not have heard. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But it turns out.
Don't vote for him, by the way.
Remember when, the Capitol was being assaulted?
I do. That was not long ago.
And you remember when the D.C. cops there, the Capitol Police, in particular, wanted to get some help from the National Guard?
Yes.
And they called over, and the Army said, nah.
Yes, I heard about that.
Turns out one of the people involved in denying access to the National Guard was Mike Flynn's brother.
That is weird. And Mike Flynn is a spy,
when
so that's
people
dangerous.
asked about that, the Army denied that was the case.
Isn't that something?
Lieutenant General Charles A. Flynn is the Army's Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, Plans, and Training.
How?
And the story from the Washington Post says Army falsely denied Flynn's brother was involved in key part of military response to the Capitol riot.
Don't falsely deny things.
Charles Flynn confirmed in a statement issued to the Washington Post that he was in the room for a tense January 6 phone call during which the Capitol Police and D.C. officials pleaded with the Pentagon to dispatch the National Guard urgently, but top Army officials expressed concern about having the Guard at the Capitol. Right?
Yes.
Flynn left the room before the meeting was over.
They are now.
I came in after the call started, and I left before it stopped.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if that's an excuse or not, but where'd you go? Did you go and call your brother? Because I'd like to know about that. I have some
Now,
questions
that
for
doesn't
you,
mean
sir.
that he was responsible for blocking anything. It's just that his brother's a nutcase, a right-wing
Yep,
nut job,
yep, yeah.
a whack job. And when asked about it, they had denied that he had any involvement whatsoever.
Yes.
In fact,
And
multiple
that
inquiries
wasn't
asked
true.
about whether Flynn was involved because they know Mike Flynn's brother is in the Army.
Yeah, they did. They knew that. They didn't tell us that. I don't know if I ever heard that before yesterday.
Right, neither did I. The episode highlights the challenge for the Army in having an influential senior officer whose brother has become a central figure in QAnon.
And as a spy.
You know QAnon. QAnon is the devotees of Joe Biden.
Yes,
The
right.
extreme ideology that
Those
alleges
guys.
Trump was waging a battle with Satan-worshipping Democrats who traffic children.
Yeah.
Michael Flynn, who previously ran the Defense Intelligence Agency and left the Army as a three-star general,
Was
has
fired
espoused QAnon
as a
messages,
spy.
and QAnon adherents are among those who have been charged in connection with the attempted insurrection. Trump announced he'd pardoned Flynn, who had pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI.
About being
So
a spy.
apparently his brother has the same lying gene.
I guess so, yeah. We should probably check that out. Geneticists will be able to pin that down for us. Yeah,
Right?
big
Army
problem.
officials before and after the interview
Big
denied that Flynn
problem.
appeared during the call. This is in all caps in an email to the Post. He was not in any of the meetings, which meant, of
Okay.
course, he was in the meetings.
Right.
And it's your misinterpretation of what I told you that is the problem.
Yeah, don't use all caps if you're lying. And really,
Right.
honestly,
I mean,
you can say you
the
can't
fact that
handle
it was
the
all in
truth.
caps was a clear sign that I meant the opposite of what I just wrote you. So why did you misinterpret what I said?
Right. I can't handle telling you the truth. This is a real line, apparently. Okay. It's something that needs to be investigated just a little bit because Flynn really is a despicable figure. Left the Army equals fired from the Army for doing spy stuff while he was the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And then went into the private sector to do more spy stuff and got caught and lied about doing the spy stuff and then got pardoned by the chief spy, Donald Trump.
Well,
Now his
again,
brother
this
is
is
doing
all
the same
part
thing.
of, hey, it's everybody else's fault. This is the
Right.
Spider-Man meme,
I'm not saying-
with multiple Spider-Mans pointing at each other, saying it was your responsibility, not my responsibility.
I'm not imposing a corruption of blood sentence here. You guys did it yourselves. I just discovered it after the fact.
Right. So again, sometimes it's the small stories that tell the big story.
Yeah.
And the whole reason for this lightning round sort of, list of all the things that happened is just it puts everything in a much bigger picture. But one of the, I think, perhaps most important and fascinating thing about Biden's speech yesterday is he took on head first, right, in plain English, the idea that the enemy is lies.
No.
Lying is bad. And we really have to start telling you the truth. And if you don't get the truth, we're never going to come together. So, again, that's all part of the Fox News nonsense about you say unity, but you want us to stop telling lies. What kind of unity is that?
Right. Yeah, they don't seem to think that there's any part to play for them in coming
No, they're
together.
objective
and all of
reporters,
this. Oh.
We report, you decide.
Yeah, I guess so. It was not my fault. The thing that person said was a lie. He said it. I have to write it down.
Right. Recent weeks and months have taught us a painful lesson, Biden said in his inauguration speech. There's truth and there are lies, lies for power, lies for profit. And each of us has a duty and responsibility as citizens, as Americans, and especially as leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation, to defend the truth and defeat the lies. And, of course, the central lie is there's reason to believe Biden's electoral victory was tainted and that somehow or other the election was stolen. And when you have Fox News people who refuse to say that, they're part of the lie. And it's not just the evening folks, it's the morning folks. And, the fact that Chris Wallace is perfectly comfortable saying, you know what, it was all a lie and we have to tell the truth, makes me think he's not going to be at that station all that long. Shep Smith is gone, and I expect Chris Wallace to be gone too.
Well, there's another thing just like that playing out in the Capitol. Again, another battle in the Capitol where Mitch McConnell, surprisingly enough, was quite candid about the fact that the people who assaulted the Capitol had been led there by a raft of lies told by the president and his enablers, and sounding for all the world like someone who would be willing to convict the president in an impeachment trial. But I did pick up the stories last night that the rank and file in the Senate Republican Conference are basically saying outright, he will not remain as Republican leader if he does that. If he holds the president accountable for his lies, he's not a Republican. We'll kick him out. In other words, they're basically saying our chief political weapon is the threat of murdering the rest of you.
And if you're not for party over country, you're not part of our party.
Right. So they're kicked out, and maybe that new party that Trump wants to start is actually the murder everybody party. If you want to, came out very clear last night. If you want to be you can't lead the murder party if you're not pro-murder guy. So get out.
So let's see what happens to McConnell and Cheney.
I guess so.
The reason that McConnell, at least, I don't know about Liz Cheney, but the reason that McConnell is where he is isn't because people like him.
Yeah.
It's because they think he gets stuff done.
Right, and now he can't do that.
But he also raises lots of money and other stuff, which he can do. So, that people want him defeated doesn't mean he's defeated, even within his own party.
That's true.
I get that people say that. I have to point out, and perhaps some of our listeners may remember, there were murmurings in the Democratic Party that people weren't fond of Pelosi.
Right, or Schumer.
Trump's gone, and Pelosi's adjusting her sunglasses.
Yes, that's true. So you can't quite count them out, although, it may be that they eventually do kick him out. But it also makes me wonder.
They might. That party is totally, completely riven. It's split. It's in trouble.
They're in disarray.
It's Democrats in disarray, except Republicans.
Right.
But it's really hard to figure how it's going to play out.
It is. It's difficult to know. And there's another component to it is here we are trying to settle on the organizing of the 50-50 Senate and negotiating with McConnell over all sorts of things, including the continued existence of the filibuster. And this adds a new wrinkle to it. Are we negotiating with the Republicans' chief negotiator or not? I do not know. I mean,
well,
used to be obvious,
since you have the votes, right, you can sort of do what you want,
can't
you?
Well, if you have them, and I guess we'll have to find out. We'll have to take measure of what does it take for Manchin to say, this is getting in the way of something I intended to do in the Senate. So
right. Well, it's a funny thing, and our friend Dana Holt pointed this out to us on Twitter a couple of days ago. That yes, it does appear the way people are writing things, because people like to write these things, that Joe Manchin is the most powerful person in the Senate outside of Susan Collins, because they get to decide what's going on here. If Murkowski, Collins, and Manchin band together and decide they want to do X, there's a good chance X will get done in this particular kind of Congress. And yet, Dana points out, when you go back and look at his actual record, when it actually mattered and it was on the line and his was the vote to decide, how often did he vote against Democrats? And the answer is not very often. Yeah, he would do it in one where it didn't matter, or the vote was not there, or he could have his, show vote or whatever. But when push comes to shove and it was actually on the line, how often did he vote against Democrats? And the easy answer is not very often, even if you can find one. That's
interesting. I think the same thing very often about Steny Hoyer, who's much more clearly a Democratic stalwart, I think, just publicly perceived that way, than Manchin is. But a lot of people really, a lot of progressives really dislike him and fear, his speakership as a potential threat more than Pelosi's. But he too, he's a pretty rock-ribbed Democrat. He's a more conservative guy in general, but he doesn't miss a beat on Democratic Party bedrock votes. So there is that.
Now, did I read right that Dick Durbin's going to be a judiciary head?
I believe that's the case. Ordinarily, it would have been Dianne Feinstein in line for that, and she's had her difficulties. Personally, and with the caucus.
It's an open secret in Washington, I'm told, that she's really not up to the job. Yeah. She's up for the job, but she's not up to the job. And so people don't like to talk about that because, like, all the senators are over 103 and nobody wants to be accused of ageism and so on and so forth. But she just ain't up to it. So it's going to be Durbin. And there may be some other surprises in terms of committees, but that's part of the organizing thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
How many people
that'll
get
be
to
an
be on the
internal
committee,
decision.
but what the rules are. If you have a 50-50 committee, which is no big deal, again, we saw people all upset about that. It's really not a big deal so long as, it's 50-50 in the case of the tie, the chairman, decides. And if that's the case, don't worry about it if it's 50-50. That's power sharing. That's fine.
Yeah. It's very difficult to, like we said, I went through the math of it yesterday. It's just not going to be possible to give yourself a numerical advantage on the committees without seriously distorting the ratio, because Senate committees just aren't that big. There's only 100 of them to go around. House committees are very large by necessity, but if you just give yourself a majority plus one, there's an internal paradox to it. If you had 51 Democratic senators plus Kamala Harris in the chair for a total, if you needed it, you could get another vote, but she only votes if it's tied. But if you had a 51-49 Senate, you very likely would give yourself the advantage of one additional. But 50 won't cut it. It's a really hard thing to convince senators and most of the public of, that if everyone knows it's a 50-50 proposition, that the committee should be 55-45, and there's the small number of people on the committee, there's just no other way to do it. And but interesting point about the discussion of a deal over the filibuster, and at this point it is just Republicans asking for a deal and Democrats saying, I don't think so. But it's important to point out that the very reasonable-looking position, they have the advantage there, Republicans, of looking like they're asking for a reasonable deal, but behind their ask for a reasonable deal is the threat to immediately abuse the filibuster by filibustering the organizing resolutions, and you shouldn't lose sight of that. And it's easy to do because it's technical and weird and people don't understand it, but their threat of blowing up the ability of the Senate to organize to the point where they can even do anything, take care of any business in committees, is an implicit threat to filibuster the organizing committee and not allow committees to form. And that would be a major disruption and would be considered an abuse of the filibuster under any other circumstances. So
right, and you can filibuster any action against Cruz and Hawley and a whole bunch of other stuff too. I saw one proposal floating around about maybe Armando made it, but I or just highlighted. I can't remember. But it was I guess I can't lead judiciary. I can't remember these things anymore. The thing about the filibuster was they were going to bring back the standing filibuster.
Oh.
Right? You were required to actually show up and stand and do the filibuster in person instead of the wink, wink, nod, nod. We'll assume it's a filibuster and just call it that. Right. But, I think if anybody actually does that, I'm okay with it. But it has to be done by Jimmy Stewart. And if you can't get it done by Jimmy Stewart, you can't do it. And so that's the end of that.
I guess so. I mean, if it were literally required him, then we would have taken care of it because...
Yeah. So, again.
But I get your point. Yeah.
There are progressives online that are going to be upset about this, that, or everything else because there always is. There's going to be moderates who are going to be upset about this. There are going to be conservatives who are going to be upset about this. But this is all part of the give and take of trying to organize something at the beginning. And it's just that the stakes are higher than normal and tensions are higher than normal. So cutting some slack is a lot less than normal. And we're going to have to do that, though. We're going to have to see how it shakes out. We don't know what Schumer is ultimately going to do. He has been majority leader for less than 24 hours, and people are already hating on him. That happened to Pelosi, as soon as she became speaker again, and even before. And that's part of the deal. I'm not saying these folks are perfect, far from it. Their political instincts are pretty good. And Biden so far has actually been pretty good, too. And now that the Senate is majority Democrat, at least by definition, and that President Joe Biden is in the White House, it's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, well, it will make a difference. And I don't think Schumer has to settle anything now, but it sounds like his caucus is telling him, well, at the very least, don't agree to any sort of unilateral disarmament over filibuster reform. We might not have the votes to push it through at the moment, but
Right. His
nothing
caucus
on the
isn't
table
any
in
more
exchange.
united and unanimous than McConnell's is.
No. Although, well, maybe on this they actually may be. I mean, Manchin certainly doesn't want. He said as much. He doesn't want to see it eliminated. But I think if you asked him, do you think he ought to make a promise to preclude it, Manchin too would say, I don't see any reason to. I mean, I'm not going to vote
That's
for
my
it.
point about Manchin not really being the one vote against Democrats when push comes to shove.
could be.
What'll happen is that you have to try to be reasonable yourself and have the Republicans reject it, and then Manchin can say, okay, we tried. We've got to do it this way.
Okay.
I mean, after all, Manchin has opened, he said to the West Virginia folks, about thinking about large check amounts, even though I hate the idea. But we got to be open to it because you got to do stuff.
Yeah, well, we'll discuss it. Well, look, here's a little tidbit here that the mighty OCD sends on to us. I didn't realize that this was the case. So not only do we not know that Flynn's brother was in the Army, but not only in the Army, like a lieutenant general in the Army. Here's news that says, coming out now that Flynn's brother was only nominated, I guess to his current position, on December 20th by committee voice vote on a Sunday, 2 weeks before the insurrection. So that's interesting. I don't know what the vote was, and it may have been a routine promotion for him, or it might have been just a new rotation. But
well, given the way everything went down, you have to suspect anybody who was put into their place in December.
Yes, that's true. I'll read more about it at some point.
Some people were forced in 3 days before Trump left.
Yeah,
they were what were they doing, and why were they doing it?
Well, now they're fired.
Again, but we dealt with that in the first part of the segment. That's part of Biden having to go through all of these appointments and, get rid of the ones that he got rid of. Tell me something about legal stuff that I don't know anything about because I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on the internet.
Habeas corpus.
What's this about rescinding pardons? What's the deal in there?
I don't know. I am just not enough of a pardon expert to have any idea.
Pardon me, but what's the deal here?
Yeah, here's what I picked up in chatter yesterday, and I just don't know the validity of all of this. And anytime you're like citing, well, back in 1870 something, Ulysses Grant, the story goes that, if you remember the story of Marbury versus Madison or the Midnight Judges, essentially it's in olden days when everything was done by paperwork, at some point somebody did some last minute pardons and they didn't deliver them to the recipients, and if they hadn't, the law was if they hadn't landed in the hands of these recipients, that the incoming president could rescind them. And that sounds like something that they might have allowed way back when, but that there's also a lot of loose interpretations around pardons in general, maybe just their nature, and it's not clear that sort of archaic standard still applies. If anybody's going to screw anything up with delivery of the pardons, though, it would definitely be the Trump folks, and it is possible that certainly possible that there are some drafting errors that will cost people something in those pardons, but I don't think there's any paper left in the desk anywhere. And it's questionable in this day and age what it means to deliver a pardon.
These things aren't get out of jail free cards anyway. I mean, if you go ahead and do something else, because I don't think these were Richard Nixon, whatever you did, I pardon you kind of stuff.
In most
I'm
cases,
thinking particularly about Steve Bannon and other people who are actually dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't know about the Duke Cunninghams of the world, the crooks who were politicians. I don't know that they're in a position to repeat anything else, although I do know our own governor here who was in jail, did all sorts of shady stuff and wound up back in jail, not for the same thing. So some of these characters go out and just repeat something bad, and so they're still liable for that.
Yeah, there's definitely that, and I understand a lot of the pardons were very narrowly written and doesn't excuse them from future behavior, and a lot of these guys still have a lot of digging to do to get out of the difficult positions they put themselves in, even if they don't face legal liability over their initial crime.
Oh, especially the commutation people.
Yeah, and
because they're still guilty.
Right. And a lot of this stuff too is a continuance of a cover up, and you never know what other how many more times in the future. This is the problem with the lies and the tangled webs, etc., that people weave. You never know when you're going to be called upon to drag the same lie or similar lie out to cover up again, because somebody else that you didn't think of gets a hold of the information, and now you're right back where you started, depending on who you're lying to or why you're doing it. So there's a lot of problems going forward for people like Bannon, who's a habitual liar and a recidivist, but and some of the others who got pardons as well have the same problem. And then a lot of the pardons lead back to the same issue. It only covers up part of the dirt. I kept digging on some of those weird pardons for New York, the New York crowd. And one of them that wasn't listed was, you may recall back in the haze of, the Russia investigations, about a Russian-American crime syndicate running a gambling operation, occupying an entire floor of Trump Tower. Does that ring a bell for you? Anyway? Those guys got pardons. And so, when you come back to it, like, okay, so the people who were actually being bugged in Trump Tower that allowed Trump to perpetuate the lie that Trump Tower was being bugged by the Obama campaign, they really were being bugged by the FBI because they were wanted criminals. And now they've got a pardon, and so I guess now Trump is back to being able to say there was no reason to be bugging Trump Tower because these people are innocent, because I just made them innocent with a stroke of the pen. Those guys will be in trouble again.
Well, Biden got a lot done, but obviously from our discussions, there's still a lot more to be done.
Yeah.
And that's why I'll be back on Monday talking about this again. Have a great weekend, everybody. It's been a wonderful year yesterday, and we'll see what else happens. David's still got the show to come, so don't go away.
All right, I won't. See you next time. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Boy, a lot to catch up on. And, maybe I ought to read more about Mike Flynn's brother and what was the deal with his appointment. I wouldn't be surprised, though. I mean, there's this element of that makes it sound a little sinister that it says here in the tweet I read you, coming out now, that Flynn's brother was only nominated on December 20th by a committee voice vote on a Sunday 2 weeks before the insurrection, which sounds nefarious and might not necessarily be, well, we'll say this. It might not necessarily be out of keeping with ordinary practice, depending on what the nomination was. And it's not at all unusual for military promotions and other things and reassignments, etc., if they require action by Congress at the end of, the end of the session, and especially the end of a Congress, when a new Congress is about to come in, for committees to push these things through and to do it rather quickly and by voice vote, and especially when it comes to stuff like promotions. I mean, it's really like the Congress doesn't look in too closely very often on the thousands and thousands of personnel officers who are up for promotion. They just look, if the Army processes these things and says that they've done their due diligence and gives us a list, for the most part, we're definitely going to just go ahead and not second guess them unless we've heard some crazy story about these people. So you never know. Let's see. Oh, Armando, I guess, has sent us a note about rescission, I guess was the word, of pardons. And, let's see. Oh, a couple other notes here, too. Let's do it in chronological order, although they all came at 9:51. So let's see. Schumer has to have the votes to nuke the filibuster, right, in order to get it done. And we're not certain that he does. That's just reality. And he's going to have to wait for some triggering event to bring Manchin around to it. Manchin is very heavily invested in his position in standing against the elimination of the legislative filibuster I've never really examined his reasons for it. It's just been an irritant to this point. But I guess now you're going to have to really focus on him and figure out what makes him tick. And maybe you want to set something up that Republicans will block that will mean a great deal to him to move him to a different position. Anyway, let's see your other comment here. First step, it seems to me, is a solution to organizing the Senate. Yes, obviously. I feel like you can get them to nuke the filibuster for the organizing document if you agree to adopt the existing rules. Yes, I did see you propose this on Twitter this morning, and we got to think through exactly what this means. But I think if I understood it correctly, the proposal was, what if Republicans are if they continue to be unreasonable in negotiating this thing, and honestly, at this point, they haven't been unreasonable, I don't think. But if they demanded more than a promise not to touch the filibuster, and they also wanted some various advantages that they're not entitled to, or I don't know. I mean, at this point, think about the crazy things that they could ask for, right? If they made some additional demands and threatened to continue to, I guess they haven't done it yet, but they threatened to filibuster the organizing resolution, so you can't even get 50-50 committees put together unless if let's say if McConnell says, I absolutely have to have your promise not to touch the legislative filibuster, and if I don't get it in this package, this agreement, whether it's formalized in writing or not, then we're going to filibuster the organizing resolution and you can't get any work done. It's, I think the idea was, what if you then turn to Manchin and say, look, I know you're against nuking the filibuster, but what's actually happening here is that they are saying we have to promise not even to bring it up, no matter what they do, no matter what they filibuster, no matter what they obstruct, no matter how ridiculous it is. We are not allowed to even contemplate getting them out of the way. And so I think what you were proposing was, the trick was, if you have a Manchin who's dedicated to the preservation of the filibuster, then I guess you could propose, look, the agreement should simply be about the committee ratios and the rules we're going to have for getting around ties in committee and whatever else we need to do to keep the place functioning, given that we're going to see a lot of ties. But why any change to the standing rules at all? The standing rules currently incorporate the filibuster, and you want to promise that I'm going to keep the rules as they are. And what does that even mean? What we're really looking at here is you could propose it this way to Manchin. They are going to filibuster the organizing resolution, even though we're offering them no changes to the rules. In other words, the filibuster stands under the current rules, and they're still going to use it to filibuster the organizing resolution. And that means we're not going to be able to fill out the committees where, you probably hold the chairmanship somewhere of a committee, plus maybe even a subcommittee chairmanship somewhere. You're not going to be able to get anything done because they want an extra promise about the filibuster. So look at it this way. Yes, technically you're going to have to nuke the filibuster, but you're going to have to nuke the filibuster in order for us to break through their blockade of the committee organization. And then after that, we propose no changes to the rules other than that. We could certainly formulate the precedent to be have the chair rule that filibustering the organizing resolution is against the rules. How about that? I mean, you could narrowly tailor it. I don't know how that works out in the future, though. Armando, now wondering. Joan is not scheduled to come on here. If you want to give a call and clarify what you're proposing here, I guess that would be fine. My fear, I guess, as I understand it, is this. If you are somehow arranging for a precedent to be set such that the organizing resolution can't be filibustered, we want to anticipate crazy stuff like the next Republican majority. I mean, we only have a 50-50 Senate. We may see a Republican majority again very soon, maybe even before the next election. If anything goes wrong with the health of any of these senators in the wrong state, it could definitely go the wrong way. But I guess, like I was proposing, what if Republicans come up with something crazy? What if they threatened to filibuster the organizing resolution unless they got a majority on the committees? It's 50-50. No one should get a majority. We're preventing Democrats from getting a majority, even though they hold the gavel. We demand 55% Republican, 45% Democratic representation on committees. And we would say, forget it. No way. Get out of here. And they said, fine. We're going to filibuster the organizing resolution, and you're not going to be able to do any work. We're happy to have it be such that the Democratic Senate can't do any work. What do you do then? Right? And so if you make it so that you can't filibuster the organizing resolution, that defeats this problem immediately. But then next Republican majority, where they have 51 senators and we have 49, and they say the committee ratios should be 70-30 Republican. And we say that's crazy. It's just barely a majority, 51-49. What makes you think 70-30 is the right ratio or even an appropriate ratio on any planet? And they say what makes us believe that is that you can't filibuster the organizing resolution. Oh. So that's what we're going to have, and it's not a proposition to you. That's what we're telling you is going to be the ratio. And aren't you sorry you established the precedent that the organizing resolution isn't subject to filibuster? Well, now that you put it that way, yes, I am. Okay, so that's the sort of thing that can cause problems, certainly. What else have we got here? Let's see. Armando also mentions they demanded a no nuking the filibuster promise. And if Schumer agrees, as I understand it, they'll adopt the 2001 rules. Although I heard a lot of people saying that they weren't going to use that as the model. I don't know why. Or at least maybe they would make some significant departures from it. And maybe that has to do with the realization of how simple it can be to change the precedents, if not the rules, through the nuclear option. Anyway, also on the subject of pardons, he says, on impeachment, there are two examples. Of what? I'm not sure, but here, down below, Bush 43. That would be George H.W. Bush rescinded his own pardon once, or a pardon that he had once floated for someone else, or even issued for someone else, and then rescinded. That's interesting. All right, well, you know what? Why don't you call in, Armando, and clarify what you're sending us in these notes, and then we can read a little bit about Mike Flynn's crazy brother and how he got where he got. Now Schumer, he says, is expressly endorsing the 2001 deal. I don't know. Well, things change from hour to hour. It wasn't Schumer that I saw rejecting the idea, but I did see some other commentators say that there would be some significant departure from the 2001 deal, although there's really no reason, honestly, to depart a great deal from it. I could see some big differences in the realities, so maybe they would make some changes. We'll see. All right. Hey, Armando, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I don't want to interrupt your Flynn's brother story.
I want to get to that too, but yeah, go ahead.
Which is an insane story. But just to finish up on this Schumer and the organizing resolution, I thought you made an interesting point. Well, once you say the organizing resolution isn't filibusterable, then, well, I'll just write you guys off of committees, I guess would be the ultimate bomb. You guys, you get to show up to vote because that's in the Constitution, presumably. But you don't get to do anything else. You don't have a committee seat. You don't get an office. You don't get staff. I mean, you
can do it that way, I guess. Sure.
Let's see the ultimate nuclear option of basically, you don't get to do, the only thing you get to do as a senator is vote on the floor. That's assuming that's constitutional. But, the whole idea that you're going to be afraid of what the Republicans are going to do, they're going to do it anyway. I mean, they always have.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really let that guide you. But, I think there's some reactions that they could have that we could be
be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, so we'll do it carefully and see what you can come up with. This would be.
I mean, how long are you going to wait? I mean, did you see Greg's text or Skype message about they're having a Commerce Committee hearing for Buttigieg right now, and Roger Wicker's chairing the hearing.
Yeah, that's true. You don't want to wait too long, and that's something that McConnell, I guess, has in his pocket. Is you could dither over it if you want to, because as long as you do, we have the advantage, and we'll be chairing these things.
Nothing he wants is going to happen in the Senate. I mean, ever. I don't think.
No. So.
I mean, he may vote for stuff, but he doesn't want it to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what I'm not certain I have an answer right away, but yeah, I mean, I guess you'd have to maybe the deal that needs to be struck isn't necessarily taking the nuclear option off the table, because, I mean, as other people mentioned yesterday, you could make that agreement and then just say, oh, well, to hell with our agreement.
Right, that was David Dayen, and he's not wrong, and I would go even further. You could write in we're not going to do it unless you abuse it.
Yeah, I mean,
language.
As long as as long as we're using old models, if we're going to use the 2001 agreement as a model for today's organizing agreement, let's use or at least part of the Gang of 14's organizing principle here and say, well, we'll take it off the table unless there are extraordinary circumstances. Something extraordinary happens.
Yeah. It was the exact phrase. Okay, you know what? Put that in the letter.
Okay.
That's the only time you're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, right. I mean, okay, so they'll have to come up with something, and the sooner the better, as you point out. This is the weird consequence of this. As I discussed yesterday, if nobody's getting their committee assignments, if they've just been elected, it's just whoever's left from before. And there's a Democratic majority, and Schumer's the majority leader, and they're having hearings on the new cabinet, and who's chairing them? It's whoever's left, and that's the Republicans. And why is this happening? And people must be tearing their hair out, except the people who are most likely to tear their hair out are probably enjoying Buttigieg having a hard time. So maybe, I don't know. It doesn't look like anything terrible is happening. Wicker's chairing it.
Oh no, I mean,
normally.
I don't think it's going to be a controversial nomination. I think whoever knows, but it would be surprising. I'm sure it's just a formality, and he'll get 70 votes or 75 votes or whatever he's going to get, and that'll be that. Yeah. So I guess there's nothing critical yet, except I haven't
eventually
heard.
There will be.
When is Merrick Garland's hearing going to happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. Although I thought we only know Merrick Garland's name because he's so popular in the Senate.
Well, it's actually true. He's probably going to get 85 votes. I think he'll probably get the most votes, except maybe Austin will beat him. But other than that, his confirmation is a foregone conclusion. But when?
Yeah, I don't know. As long as there's no organizing resolution, they can play scheduling games if they want to. Not certain whether they do or not, but you definitely need to get to something. So, yeah. They'll probably have to come up with something. There'll probably have to be a codicil somewhere where they say, look, and maybe it's not Schumer, or maybe it's even better if it's not Schumer. And Schumer just says, look, I negotiated the best I could, but I don't know how big your gang
would
have
point.
to be.
Make it a gang of 14. Let the moderates say we will now support nuking of the filibuster, except if something extraordinary happens.
Yeah, so
it's actually a pretty good
get
solution.
A gang. He'll be popular. He'll be in a gang. Collins, I don't trust her, but
I don't trust any of them. But just to get the organizing resolution, if McConnell if he wants some type of assurance, let the moderates give it to him.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a big gang either. The reason it was a gang of 7 last time
was enough.
Yeah, basically. So a gang of 2 will do it, but that doesn't feel like a gang. Gang of 4, that's taken. A gang of 6. Is the next even number.
It's solvable, but what's taking so long?
There's already a gang of 8. 6 is open. You're going to have to go with 6, guys.
Okay. But you know what I mean? I do think getting these people confirmed is pretty important.
Yes.
For the Biden administration to get going on COVID. I mean, today's a COVID day, but you don't have an HHS secretary. Mm-hmm. You don't have a new head of FDA. I think the CDC person's an acting, so they probably have some actings that they feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
There's an acting AG now. I forget what his name is that I guess they feel comfortable with, but still, it's not the same.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you want to get those people in there. There's a lot of power that's contingent on owning the titles.
Well, it is. I mean, you need to name a person who's the boss, who's got the imprimatur of having been confirmed.
Well, right. There's a lot of that, and there's a lot of laws that say things like, if they're finding out about people who've been burrowed in, and from the Trump administration, and they're dangerous.
I'd fire them all that I don't like.
It would be great.
I don't care what they say. Let them go to court and try to get back in.
Yeah, and I mean that might eventually be what happens, and you might have to make some accommodation with them. I'm just saying that there's a place eventually where a court may say, well, you can fire them, but it has to be. It says in the law the secretary has to do it, and you don't have a secretary.
Exactly.
Shoot.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big one right there. You saw the three people, you probably discussed it already, that they've already cashiered.
Right.
The Ellis guy that they tried to make NSA general counsel has been put on administrative leave.
Yeah. Wasn't that one of the My Pillow guys things too? He wanted
that was one of the My Pillow guys. And then, but Patel, I guess, is still running around the Defense Department for whatever that's worth. But the other one was the CPFB person, but the Supreme Court made that easy for Biden by saying that he can't be independent of the president, so the president can fire him.
Okay. Sounds easy.
So Biden said,
there are going to be some complicated ones. And he's moaning and groaning that, you're not supposed to fire me. And of course it's hilarious because it's a labor thing, and he's and he's been fighting labor organizing for years, and now you find out it really kind of sucks to be an at-will employee. Sorry.
I mean, I actually got to believe some of those positions really the president should be able to fire. There are obviously a very large number of jobs that are civil servant, do the work jobs, but some are policy setting, and elections have consequences. I would think the general counsel of the Department of Labor would be someone who would be like that. And of course, there is a precedent that Harry Truman fired a general counsel of the Department of Labor in 1950. So it's not unprecedented, though it's pretty unusual. And the reason it's unusual, of course, is most of these people are honorable and resign when a new administration comes in, so the president can pick his own people. That's what most people do. Like every attorney general across the country in all the jurisdictions generally submits their resignation to the attorney general, who then decides, with the president presumably, who he wants to keep, if any, and who he wants to replace.
Yeah. You guys, simply by declining their offer of resignation, you can keep the same person in place. You don't have to start all over.
Then that is that, at least as I understand it, that's the norm of how it works. I mean, I'll give you, from Trump's day, Preet Bharara submitted his resignation, but he wanted to stay, so they were talking to him about it, and then Trump said nope.
Yeah.
And he didn't get fired. His resignation was accepted.
Yeah. That's the way it works. So, we'll see what happens with the Labor Relations Board situation. I don't think I probably just didn't develop into anything. He's just gone, and that's it.
I think he's just gone. What is he going to do? Go to court? Because he's going to lose.
He could, but
I think the case law now that the conservatives have created is giving the president an incredible amount of power in terms of hiring and firings. I think the civil service law would be, frankly, if you take it to its logical conclusion, the civil service law is unconstitutional.
Okay. Yeah. I guess it can be. Let's see.
I don't think it is. I'm just telling you, if you take it to its logical conclusion. Anyway, let me not get in the way of your Flint story, because it's a WAPO story I think you were going to be looking at. I was pretty dumbfounded by it, but I'll let you explain it.
Okay. I don't know. You want to listen along on this, or you can certainly comment on it if you like. As a matter of fact,
I think there is a law issue in this sense. Just if you want me to go, I'll go. But I'll preview the law issue. To me is,
what do you think?
Someone lied in the Defense Department
Yes,
about
that's
the guy
definitely a
being on the
problem.
call.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's a serious problem to have military people who are lying to cover up Flynn's brother being involved.
Yes, that's definitely a weird thing. And in another circumstance, you might be able to say, all right, well, somebody, needs a stern talking to, and that could be enough. But when it involves Mike Flynn, more than that is necessary. Otherwise, if it didn't involve some controversial figure like this, and I guess it could, I don't know if you could just get away with it, given that it was involving an insurrection and an attack on the Capitol. That's going to be kind of hard to duck too. But
there's a second issue that it's not clear whether he is the person who said we don't like the optics.
Yeah. Right.
And, if you read the story to the audience. And so
I will. And there's a second story.
They get the flavor.
The second story that's been forwarded to me here over Twitter. Karen sent me this other one. Like, oh my goodness, this is even worse. Just another one here from Vox. So first I wanted to read you the yesterday's Washington Post, which was the big bombshell. Wherein we all first found out that there was another Flynn at all, and then we found out who he was. Now, man, I don't know if I read this, it's going to make me want to go to this one first. Fox, Michael Flynn's brother has a totally surprising request for Trump. Pardon Michael Flynn. Now, this is an old article, but this is back in December of 2017. Apparently, somebody, anyway, did know that there was another Flynn. So, right up in the beginning, what is Mike Flynn's brother, who's a general and active duty in the armed forces, doing?
Yes.
Petitioning for pardons, or is this another brother? No, it is. Oh, my God. Anyway, he's not a general.
Wait, he has that other brother, Joseph Flynn.
Yes, Joseph, okay. So Joseph Flynn is, I don't know what. I'm going to find out the guy is, also a general. How do you all get three generals?
I don't think he's an active duty officer, but he might have been in the military, but he's just one of the crazy QAnon people.
Okay. So, all right, Joe Flynn I don't know anything about. I don't know whether this article will tell us anything about. I guess in this case we ought to then concentrate on the current piece on Charles Flynn, Lieutenant General Charles Flynn, Army's Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, Plans, and Training. And I guess that's the new, maybe the new position to which he was promoted recently. Army falsely denied for days that Flynn, the brother of disgraced former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, was involved in a key meeting during its heavily scrutinized response to the deadly assault on the U.S. Capitol. Another complicating factor, to say the least. Charles Flynn confirmed in a statement to the Post yesterday that he was in the room, anyway, for whatever that means, for a January 6th phone call in which the Capitol Police and D.C. officials pleaded with the Pentagon to dispatch the National Guard urgently, but top Army officials expressed concerns about having the Guard at the Capitol, where they are now, and I guess they're over it. Flynn left the room before the meeting was over, anticipating that then Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy, who was in another meeting, would soon take action to deploy more Guard members, he said. So what was he going to go help him deploy those, but not, I don't know. I entered the room after the call began and departed prior to the call ending, as I believed the decision was imminent from the Secretary and I needed to be in my office to assist in executing the decision. All right, it could happen. Don't know if it makes any difference. The general's presence during the call, which was not previously reported, came weeks after his brother publicly suggested that Trump declare martial law and have the U.S. military oversee a redo of the election, with his brother as lieutenant general. Okay. There is no indication that Charles Flynn shares his brother's extreme views or discharged his duties at the Pentagon on January 6th in any manner that was influenced by his brother. Not directly, but over here we have this other article that says his other brother's crazy and under his influence. So is this one? Not necessarily, but maybe. And it's not a crazy maybe either. Let's see. It makes sense.
I think what's interesting about this story is that if you keep reading it, you'll see they talk about the resistance to actually send in Guard troops.
Even though we have to find out whether
they're in the building. Don't worry about the optics. We're way past the optics.
Yeah.
We need operational help.
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, gosh, here's some optics for you. Hold the phone up and you can hear the gunfire. We just killed somebody in here. That's optics. Yeah, I guess I don't know whether they didn't believe the initial reports, because I could see that happening, because who would have believed it, honestly, except for the fact that I knew, and I'm not I have no secret clearance. I turn on a TV. I'm sure they have TVs at the Pentagon. Positive. Anyway, we'll take a break, and let's skim forward and see what we can mine out of this. I don't know. It's going to take some development to figure out exactly what he meant and what he said and how much we care. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Armando's still with me. We've been discussing over the break. All right, how much of this story do we have to parse through? I'm concerned about it, if only because I don't think we're going to be able to reach a conclusion today. My fear is if we spend the rest of the show on it, it might never become super important. I mean, I don't know what do you want out of this? Even if the worst scenario you can imagine comes out to be true, do we find Flynn fired at some point? But maybe it's important. I mean, I guess what's being raised here but isn't proven here, because it can't be proven here, is something that, I guess I would say under ordinary circumstances, this wouldn't happen under ordinary circumstances, but under ordinary circumstances, you'd say, I don't know that this is something to pursue, firing this one general, but the fact that he's related to Flynn, ordinarily, again, wouldn't mean enough, except that, you're talking about somebody who's really super crazy and super dangerous, and has another brother who apparently who's not as dangerous because he's not positioned in the Pentagon, but is obviously as crazy. And, Mike Flynn's son is just as crazy. It seems pretty clear. You know what? Even before QAnon, why is Mike Flynn a controversial figure to begin with? And the answer is because he was a little bit of a weird Svengali guy in the Pentagon, in the during Iraq, and in his tenure at the Defense Intelligence Agency. And he was a guy who you couldn't tell him anything about anything. You thought he knew the answers to everything, and he was in fact it ends up being the case, delusional and crazy, and in charge of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and not above, as he proved once he was kicked out from the military, not above contracting for profit with foreign governments to lobby against American foreign policy and not disclose it. And of course, the
Emmett Sullivan's first interaction with him when he came in to plead, and he basically said, "You're a traitor."
Yeah, why aren't you being charged with treason here? I'm reading the record. I don't know why that charge isn't on the record. I'm thinking back to his time at the Defense Intelligence Agency. Why does my pinned tweet from November of 2016 say Mike Flynn is a spy? And the answer is not even because of what he did with Turkey. That just validated it. When he was at the Defense Intelligence Agency, again, he had this reputation back in the day from Iraq, and he's a maverick, and he goes his own way, and sometimes he bends the rules to get things done, that kind of thing, sort of thing that people, I kind of admire his, toughness and moxie and whatnot. I don't know what stupid term you might use these days. But anyway, so he's put in charge of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And given the fact that, gosh, he's such a maverick, I guess they sort of expected him to try to bend/break the rules at some point. But, the rules at the Defense Intelligence Agency are kind of a different set of circumstances than the rules of the Army. You can't say no to your commanding officer versus, you're not allowed to copy all the information on the computers of the Defense Intelligence Agency and carry it home with you. That's a different kind of a rule, right? And he ends up there.
Andy Berger was arrested for that.
Right. So big maverick, and he doesn't listen to the rules. And then his later activity is, I'm going to do the work of foreign governments and keep it a secret from our own government and do it for money, and that's an espionage problem. And so the guy's got a maverick problem and an espionage problem, both of the slices of bread on the Mike Flynn sandwich here. And in the middle, the filling of the Mike Flynn sandwich is he is now the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and as I mentioned, they have incredibly strict rules and protocols about electronics and electronic communications at DIA. Just as you might imagine to be the case. And one of the rules, which they also have over for clerks at the Supreme Court, by the way, just in terms of avoiding leaks, one of the best ways of avoiding leaks, advanced leaks about how the justices are going to rule is there's no internet connections on the computers for the clerks over at the Supreme Court. They can look at the case law databases, but they have no email. They have to go to a different computer. Or use their own personal devices, and they're not supposed to be doing it while they're in the office anyway. At DIA, similarly, their own computers are networked, but there's not supposed to be like general, you can use the internet and email and search the web and, play solitaire or whatever, internet connections in the DIA's offices, its central offices at the Pentagon. And Mike Flynn said, I'm such a maverick, I want that because I'm not allowed to carry out disk after disk after disk full of all the data that I want to steal from the Defense Intelligence Agency. I would rather just pipe it out via email. And they said, you can't do that. We have a no connectivity policy as a safeguard against someone doing something incredibly stupid and traitorous like that. And so we're not going to allow that to happen. And he said, but I'm a maverick and I do things my own way. And he actually just went the hell ahead and I don't even know how get to do this. Like you just call Comcast and say, if anybody stops you, shoot them. It's only the Pentagon. But he went ahead and he did this and he connected up his computers and then God only knows what happens. Nobody ever accused him of anything until it came around to, you are now fired. Get the F out of the Pentagon, which is ordinarily a big deal for a lieutenant general and for the president to stick his finger in the pie there and say, you, general, out. And the only reason that comes to light, the only reason that kind of thing would come to pass is if they were like, I know it sounds crazy, but this guy is, I don't know, he's installing internet in the middle of the DIA offices. I don't know, or I'm not telling the public what he's doing with it because that would be incredibly dangerous. But, sir, you have to get rid of this guy. And Obama, level-headed, no-drama Obama, did it. And then kept mum about why. Just like, unfortunately, he kept mum about the Russian interference in 2016 because he thought he would keep a lid on things and keep the country together if he did it. Similarly, he didn't say anything about, I got handed a spy as director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, but thank God we found him out, and he's out, and he can't do us any damage now.
Yeah.
Well. And then you're like, he's got a twin brother who's also crazy, who's a lieutenant general. Oh, well, probably he wasn't on the call. Really?
Absolutely, too. What's a funny little sidebar on the internet connection and not connecting? That was one of their big to-dos about the voting machines. That they were accessible by the internet.
Yeah. Essentially.
Which wasn't true.
Right. But that was the big claim.
That was their big accusation.
Yeah.
Obviously, he would know about that accusation since he's the guy who was trying to spy and allow foreigners to spy on us by putting internet in his office.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's as obvious. Look, their plans, their accusations about what was going on as QAnon dummies were stupid and overly, were ridiculous and elementary, but that's what they believed. And because just as ridiculous as elementary is, if I install the internet in my office, I can just steal everything. Well, no, they'll find out about that. They'll notice. No, they won't. I won't tell anybody. And if they do, I'll tell them my brother wasn't on the call and I wasn't on the internet. But both are lies. No, they're not.
It's really something else.
I mean, like I said at the beginning of the story, ordinarily, you couldn't stand here and say, oh, but his brother might be as crazy as he is because, you go to court with that, just like Rudy Giuliani. You can't really just blurt that out and say that that's the case if you can't prove that it's the case. So ordinarily, you don't make that call. But on the other hand, one, I'm not in court, and two, I say, well, he probably wasn't on the call. All right, well, you know what? I doubt that because he's got a crazy-ass brother. He's got two crazy-ass brothers. One of whom is a spy and a QAnon wacko and a Svengali, and he talks people into doing dumb stuff that they shouldn't do on his say-so, and I'm wondering if that happened again here.
Well,
no.
About it makes it really
that's the problem, right? Somebody says no, that's ridiculous. You're accusing him of corruption of blood. That's ridiculous. You can't do such a thing. All right, that's true, but I do have one question. I asked if he was on the call. And you said no, and the answer was yes. Why did you say that? Can you explain that?
Yeah, and even by Flynn's own story, his involvement in whatever the response was going to be was apparently extensive. You made it sound like, oh, this guy had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, well, he wasn't on the call. Well, was he on another call making that decision, or was he not on the call like he has nothing to do with like he's in logistics and he's in the motor pool,
Yes,
so
exactly.
It didn't have anything to do with it. No, he's the guy.
Remember the Kraken's expert on military intelligence who turned out to be a mechanic?
Yeah, all right. Yeah,
so maybe if he was that, but no, he wasn't. He's one of the guys who's actually running the operation.
Yeah. So what did they say his title was in the up in the caption? It was Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, Plans, and Training. So I don't really know what that encompasses, but it's certainly not impossible that he would have been involved in making that decision. And now it turns out that he was.
According to Flynn, he was deeply involved.
Okay. Well then, yeah, but he wasn't on the call. And what does that mean? Even it's another one of the no collusion thing. All right, but did you do any of these other things that you are unwilling to call collusion? Yes, but I'm not saying the word. Well, you weren't on the call. Were you on the email? Were you on the text? Did you give the order? Right, right. Did you order the code red? I didn't make any phone calls. That's not what I asked you, sir. And you did. You made 3 phone calls, somewhere. As a matter of fact. Right. Yeah. Well, we'll have to look into it. And I got to tell you, like I said, ordinarily it's not a good, solid story to go on, except for now there's a lie and everybody wants to know why there would be a lie. But under normal circumstances, it's not a solid story. But under the
I'd be suspicious, but I wouldn't be yelling about it. But once I find out that they're lying about it, then I'm like, what the hell are you hiding?
Right. And why is the call so important to you? And why the categorical denial? It could be just a mistake, but why the effort to, and by the way, bad way of throwing people off the scent of something is all caps, exclamation point emails. This is a lie. I'm going to have to look at this now.
Yeah, you take a look at that. And while you're looking at that, I'll give one little piece of news that interests me, and I think probably interests you, is that Durbin, Senator Durbin, before he went on TV to do an interview said he had just talked to Schumer and asked him, when are we getting these articles of impeachment?
Yeah.
And Schumer said, we don't know yet. Not today? No, definitely not today.
Okay. Well, all right. That's one answer. For those of you who read Politico's article last week and turned on the TV yesterday at 1, because there was an ironclad promise from Politico that we talk to people who know what they're doing, and they said there's no choice but to start at 1 p.m. on Wednesday. You were very disappointed. In fact, there wasn't even a live Senate feed from the floor until 4:30, because that's when they convened on Wednesday, and you might feel cheated had you abided by Politico's advice in that.
That was the weirdest story. I mean, you and I, we both looked at it the day of and said, that can't be right. What are you even talking about?
No, it's not even a good... I've seen people read the rules overly literally and not read the precedents and miss out on the nuance of things. But even a straight-up read of the rules is like, well, there's some mandatory activity at 1 p.m. the day after the articles are displayed in the Senate, but you got to display them, and that didn't happen, and it won't happen on the 19th, and we can tell it won't happen on the 19th because there has to be some back and forth in messaging between the House and the Senate to set that up, and that hasn't happened. So, no, you're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, they were wrong even if the message and the managers were sent on the 19th. That would have been wrong.
On the 20th, you could have...
Even under their own little scenario, that was wrong.
It was weird, and I don't know. There's so far no effort to correct that, but okay.
Or explain away, hey, we said it. You know, they just pretended they never wrote that story. It's the funniest thing.
It's okay. I mean, all right. So we're right, they're wrong. They know it. We know it. The writers aren't horrible people.
No, they're generally okay. But, this is arcane stuff, and we're weirdos, and we look at all the arcane stuff.
Yeah.
The impeachment rules we've combed over. My little hobby horse is send it to a committee.
Yeah.
And I just think it's the best way to do it anyway, because that way there's no issue of regular business in the Senate. Mm-hmm. And frankly, it gives you enough time to really develop more evidence if you think you need to.
Yeah, you probably do.
And then you sort of time the whole experience in the full body to when, it's kind of convenient. When it's, we've got all our confirmations, we passed a major bill. Okay, now we're ready.
Yeah, and keep it out of the hands and keep the discussion focused, because if it's on the floor, it's just going to be senators discussing, as they continue to do here. Well, Alan Dershowitz says we don't even have jurisdiction, and we shouldn't even start this thing, and it's and it's these weird citations to I don't know. I guess I'll be talking about the Constitutional Convention and what the founders meant. They're all very interesting and everything. And I assume it meant to lead us away from the fact that you guys murdered cops here.
Exactly, and that's the whole point. You want to get that to be the story. They want it to be some high-minded constitutional discussion when it's basically the then president of the United States, incited an insurrection, which caused many deaths.
Right. So let's, and I guess if you want to, I don't know. I guess the only thing I would say is if you want to cry about the jurisdiction thing, I mean, I guess you can. You're wrong about it, but people make jurisdiction arguments before the court all the time, and the ultimate arbiter of whether the court has jurisdiction is the court. So they'll decide. But I don't see why this is anomalous. How can the Senate decide? Well, it's the court for impeachments.
It's the sole court for impeachments.
Yeah, it says so right here. And, if a court told you did or didn't have jurisdiction and the Supreme Court confirmed it, you would say, oh, well, damn it. Well, for this, there's only one court, and this is it. And if they say they have jurisdiction, that's the end of the argument. Sorry. Of course, they say, oh, we'll appeal your decision about your own jurisdiction to the Supreme Court, which... No, ordinarily, again, but with crazy
they certainly
justices,
won't at
maybe.
That point be able to do it. I mean, that would only happen if he's convicted and disqualified, and
right.
if he wants to run again, then you have a case or controversy, possibly. But I still think a court would say this is a political question. It's not for us to decide.
I think so.
Until the Supreme Court decides one way or the other whether they think it's a political question beyond decision, or they don't, and they decide one way or the other.
Yeah, it won't change any of their minds, but I would challenge them and say, if you think you're right, give us the case. You want to prove it?
Obviously, there's no case to cite, except there's Senate precedent, but there's
just
no. Well, there's Nixon on our side, Nixon v. U.S., which you and I talk about all the time.
Yeah. Which
is not the Richard Nixon case; it's the Judge Nixon case. But they said the Senate decides what it decides. We don't get involved.
So right, and I don't know. They probably try and differentiate somehow and say it's not on point, but it's pretty clear. But yeah, I mean, look, if you think you're right and the Supreme Court would intervene and invalidate the Trump impeachment if the Senate went forward with it, then cool, go for it. Prove me wrong. I'm very interested to see the case be taken up, but the case can't be taken up unless you have an impeachment. And otherwise, I mean, they don't care. They'll win either way. I'm just as happy to be only theoretically right and have saved my quote-unquote client from impeachment trial. But, if you think you're right, let the court have it.
There's going to be a motion to dismiss, and I frankly would be surprised if that motion was successful. First of all, we have 50 votes, and Manchin says, we have them dead to rights. So, I think Manchin's pretty much a sure conviction vote. To be honest with you, it could raise the issue that on a motion to dismiss, does the vice president vote? I would argue yes, but you could tell me that there's precedence the other way on it, and I would believe you. But just on the face of what I saw, why wouldn't the president of the Senate have the tie-breaking vote on a procedural motion in the impeachment?
Well, it'd be interesting. Although, I mean, I guess I'll approach it slowly with them and say I'll ask them again at the end of the argument whether they want the vice president to vote or not. I would just say, I'm sorry, the motion is to dismiss, and you don't have a majority. So
you're saying so it's denied?
Yeah, I'm denying your motion to dismiss. It's a 50-50.
That's even better. That's a great little. You're absolutely right. That would be the way you would decide a court case, certainly.
So
the issues before us, and if you don't win a majority of a panel, you don't win.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, you've lost 50-50. That's gonna make it hard to swallow. But if you want the tie broken, I'll do it. Do you want me to vote?
Right.
No. We'd rather take our case to the public to cry about it being 50-50. Because I'm ready to make it 51-50 if you think that'll make it easier for you to sell to your people. No. All right, then. I'm not saying I can't vote. I'm just saying I don't need to.
It's already defeated, and I don't have to vote.
It's I only have a vote to break a tie, but that's only if we need the tie broken. I mean, that too. If there's a Republican bill that comes to the floor for whatever reason, and they allow it to come to a vote, and it's 50-50, it doesn't pass, and you could say, well, maybe Kamala Harris will vote with the Republicans on this one, and or maybe it's one of those poison pill kind of things, or we're going to attack them if they don't vote for this because it's got Girl Scout cookies in it or whatever, and she said, I'll avoid the whole problem by not voting for it, and you still don't pass. So don't forget about that, everybody. You got to have a majority.
I had completely forgotten about that, and that's right. We only need her vote when we want her to pass it. If we don't care about passing it, and in fact we don't want it to pass, we say don't vote. 50-50 is down.
Right. So I don't know. Craft your emotions carefully. If it's a motion to dismiss, I'm happy to stay out of it. No controversy. You can't whine and complain about she shouldn't be allowed to vote. Well, she didn't. You just lost.
Well, I think the vote I would want her to vote on is invoking Rule 11 of the impeachment rules to convene a committee.
Yeah, that sure. And they'd have a lot less to complain about there. She's not going to serve on the committee.
Well, no, she's definitely not going to serve on the committee. In fact, that's actually pretty good. So you know what? why don't we send it to a committee and then they'll come back and then we'll take up all the motions.
Yeah. You guys work it out, and we won't involve that 51st emergency vote until all the issues are developed and then all the evidence is laid out. So they should be in favor of moving it off the floor too. So,
what they want to do is I feel like I hijacked your conversation, and I'll stop now, but I'll just say they want it's done in 2 or 3 days, obviously. Yeah. So, the question I would ask Democrats is, if the Republicans are very eager to get it done in 2 or 3 days, isn't your instinct to say, well, there must be a reason for that? And since this is a zero-sum game, good politics for me is bad politics for them and vice versa. Maybe I shouldn't do a short 3-day trial like that.
As things stand, with every passing day, the story gets worse and worse. I mean, the Flynn story is only a story because we've waited. I mean, I guess they probably thought that, I don't know whether they thought that would blow over or what, but now there's that complication, and it just looks that much worse. And it certainly looks for all the world like there was another plot with the Q crazies to murder a bunch of members of Congress. And maybe maybe this is why Trump persisted with this dumb stuff for so long, and why QAnon nuts persisted with stuff for so long. They kept telling the story, the army is going to flip to our side. And I can't tell you about what's going to happen in the army, but there was a lieutenant general in charge of, should we stop this insurrection or not? And he said no, so maybe you have something there.
Well, let me just drop one bit of fact on you. After the insurrection and after the senators were getting and the congresspersons were getting ready to reconvene, who was calling senators to ask them to vote, to object?
Yeah,
and
Trump
you
and the
can
team.
look at exactly what Rudy Giuliani said.
Yeah.
I need you to slow this down. I need some more days.
Right. So now we need the days. So we'll slow it down so we can discover more information about who else was asking them to slow down.
So just take an idiot like Michael Tracy who says, oh, look, those crazy people, they were going to overthrow the government. No, what they were going to do was what Trump and Giuliani wanted them to do.
Yeah.
Which is that they were going to stop the Congress from doing the count of the electoral votes on that day, so they could get another day and another day and see what happened, because that was their whole goal. And who knows what their end game was.
Yeah, they may not have had one. They just thought, let's just draw it out.
Right.
Maybe something will happen.
My point is they were willing to have people killed to do that.
Well, that is a problem, isn't it? And let's see what happens thing here, we're all calculating, well, there's nothing about, even if they drag it out to the 20th, then it just goes to Nancy Pelosi, and they're like, oh, you don't understand. When I say let's see what happens, I mean let's see if we murder anybody. Like you say, Nancy Pelosi will become president on the 20th. Not if we kill her, she won't. Holy shit.
Exactly.
We're talking about a totally different thing.
Another day. And
I've lost control of my own,
and
not only my own show, but my own.
Was, insane or not? First of all, the whole thing was insane. The issue here is they were willing to have people killed.
Yes, that's
and
right.
I would put that on Trump and Giuliani too. And that's why I think if you develop this record and you actually find out what Trump did, you look at his phone logs. Who was he talking to? What are the records? Who did he talk? I mean, was he on the phone with Rudy the whole time? Saying, Rudy, call those guys. Because Trump called too, as we know.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll have to find those things out. As I was saying last night, I didn't want to ruin things during the celebration last night, but it did occur to me towards the end there, as we were all enjoying the fireworks and feeling good about things, that we were literally seconds away. There's an alternative timeline out there, not far removed from this one, where we were seconds away from not having fireworks and Katy Perry and celebrations because Joe Biden was in church again and in the White House preparing to go back to Arlington this morning to eulogize murdered members of Congress rather than celebrating the peaceful transition of power. We were that close. I mean, they told the story. We all learned about Eugene Goodman and how he misdirected the rioters away from the unguarded Senate door because the senators were still in there. What do you think they were going to do? They had the zip ties. They told people that they were out there to hunt down and capture and kill members of Congress. This thing almost went way, way wrong, and now John Cornyn is like, well, Dershowitz says we don't have jurisdiction.
That's why I sent it to a committee and fully develop that record.
Absolutely. I guess it has to be that way. All right, well, we got Friday still to talk about this. I mean, at least we got the Flynn thing on the record, and we can see that there's more that needs to be read about and discussed and developed there, too. And it's not just all about laughing at Proud Boys who are crying about Trump being a cuck all of a sudden. All right.
All right,
we'll
David.
sign off for
Have
today.
a good one.
Thank you. You do the same. Probably talk again tomorrow because things are still pretty crazy. The lawnmower guys are right outside the window, so it's probably time to duck out of here as soon as possible and hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. What in the world could there possibly be to talk about at this point? Well, the NRA, how about them? In a double-barreled legal battle in New York and Texas courts. Let's find out about that. The indicted Texas Attorney General, remember him? He can't wait to sue the Biden administration. That'll go well. And more than 600 immigrant kids still separated from their families thanks to Trump. What else did he not deliver?
From netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
How about this from around the world? Tunisia's leaders have failed to quell youth unrest. And Italian police have recovered a 500-year-old copy of Da Vinci's Salvador Mundi that was stolen from a Naples church during the pandemic without priests knowing it was gone. Everyone was locked down. Next.